going to be doing a tag video. It's one that's been circulating around BookTube as of late, and it's a tag that everyone does pretty much every year, and it's the mid-year book freakout tag. And this tag was originally by two booktubers, Earl Books and Chami, and I'll link their channels down below. I just thought that this year I'll join along on this tag trend. It has definitely not been the greatest reading year in terms of quantity for me, but I definitely have been enjoying all the books that I have been picking up. I mean, it can be a little hit or miss here and there, but for the most part I have been enjoying all the books that I've been reading. So we'll see how we go with this tag. I feel like I've only read a handful of books. I don't know, I feel like all the books that I've read is probably going to be included in this tag. I guess without further ado, we'll get straight into the video. The first question is, best book you've read so far? For that, I'm going to be choosing Little Fires Everywhere by Celeste Ng. As much as I read very entertaining books throughout the year, I feel like Little Fires Everywhere is a little bit different. It's literary fiction. It's set in a suburban neighborhood, and it kind of follows like the drama that occurs in this neighborhood, and it follows a variety of different characters. And literary fiction is something that I don't usually read that often. However, with Celeste Ng, I love how she creates a story that's full of mystery, even though it's set in this very boring, bland neighborhood. The way she writes characters and the way she sets up a mystery aspect of a story. And also I feel like a lot of like the entertaining books that I've been reading this year have been kind of surface level, but with Little Fires Everywhere it kind of went a little deeper. It touches on some deeper topics and themes of rich versus poor, the difference between immigrants and people who have been born into a certain country. There's definitely commentary on racism and all this other layers to the story that makes it a bit more deeper, a bit more thought-provoking, and I highly enjoyed it. From what I've read, I feel like Celeste Ng does a really good job at building mystery and suspense even in a boring, bland setting, but for some reason she makes it really engaging at the same time. So I would categorize this as the best book I've read so far this year. It was a bit of a hard pick because I enjoyed a lot of books this year, but that one takes the cake. Question number 2 is the best sequel that you've read so far this year, and I will have to choose The Wicked King by Holly Black. I had a blast with this series in general, but I definitely think that The Wicked King is the best book in the trilogy. This is the second book in the Folk of the Air trilogy. I don't know how to explain it without getting too much into detail. I will be doing a full-length review on this book sometime in the near future. Definitely enjoyed the second book immensely. It was very addictive and very fast-paced, and I enjoyed it. The tension was high. There's a lot of political intrigue and maneuvering. I love this series, even though it's kind of, let's just say, a little bit trashy, but I don't know why, but I really love this trilogy. The first one kind of establishes the world a little bit and the characters, but this one gets straight into the politics and all this other drama, and I loved every second of it. The third question is a new release that you haven't read yet but want to read. I really do want to read My Dark Vanessa by Kate Elizabeth Russell, and that's a book that kind of delves into more of a taboo topic of a romance between a teacher and a student. But from what I've heard, My Dark Vanessa kind of highlights the issue and problematic elements to that sort of idea and how sort of predatory that act is. It's something that I feel like will be a bit more dark and twisted and, you know, emotional at the same time. So that's the book that I've really wanted to read this year. I haven't picked it up yet, but it is a book that I kind of want to get to sometime in the later half of the year. So that's definitely one I want to pick up. Question number 4 is the most anticipated release for the second half of the year. For that question, I came down to 2 books that I'm really anticipating. First one is How the King of Elfham Learned to Hate Stories by Holly Black. Earlier this year, you know, I was on a Holly Black kick. I definitely love everything that's involved with the Folk of the Air series. So this one, I believe, is from the perspective of Carden. I'm not entirely sure. I think it is. Whatever is involved with Holly Black and the Folk of the Air series, I'm on board with it. I love that series so much. The second book that I have is A Deadly Education by Naomi Novik, and this is one that I'm definitely interested in. I loved Uprooted by Naomi Novik. I still have to read, I think it's called Spinning Silver by her as well. She's just a very atmospheric writer. Her stories kind of remind me of a folktale, and it's just gorgeous and beautiful, I'm really looking forward to this book by her. I'm really hoping that the release dates for these two books don't get pushed back at all. I'm highly anticipating these two books, and I know I was only supposed to choose one book, but whatever. The fifth question is the biggest disappointment of this year. I will have to choose Snow Country by Yasunari Kawabata. And this book, I was just hoping that I was gonna love this book. I thought that this book was gonna be so much more, and it does delve into themes that I was really looking forward to, like sadness and loneliness, and I thought it was just gonna be very emotional. Totally the opposite. I was so disconnected with the characters. I was so disappointed in the story. It's a very simple premise, but I just could not connect to the characters. I absolutely hated the main character. So this was a highly disappointing read, and I own 2 more books by this author and I'm kind of wary about them. Hopefully they're a lot better than Snow Country. This was a major disappointment for me. Moving on, question number 6 is the biggest surprise of this year, and I'm gonna have to say that it was The Cruel Prince by Holly Black. Yes, another book from the Folk of the Air trilogy or series. I would say that this book was the biggest surprise for me because I kind of went into it thinking that I wouldn't enjoy it as much, and I kind of just picked it up because there was like 2 or 3 booktubers that I came across that I really enjoy who raved on about their love for The Cruel Prince, and I know that this book got a lot of hype when it first got released, but I was just not interested at all. But for some reason, listening to certain booktubers that I really like and like their reading taste commenting about how much they liked this book, I was very intrigued, so I picked it up and I was really surprised because I honestly went into this book thinking that I would not like the story, especially because it sounds sort of generic, but for some reason it was highly addictive. I don't know if it's Holly Black's writing style, but I also really enjoyed the characters as well. Definitely was a surprise. Question number 7 is favorite new author, either a debut or new to you, and I will have to say that it is Margaret Rogerson. I don't know if I should really put her in this category because technically I read An Enchantment of Ravens last year. It was the last book that I read last year, and then I straight away picked up Sorcery of Thorns. I know this book gets a lot of mixed views. Even her first book, a lot of people either loved it or hated it as well, but for me, I really enjoyed both her books. I just love the way she writes. It's kind of light and fluffy. There's nothing too deep about her books, but they're so enjoyable and so light-hearted, and it kind of is a feel-good book. And if I'm ever in a reading slump, I can always pick up one of her books and just fly through it. And so, I don't know, in terms of enjoyment and how I feel after reading any of Margaret Rogerson's books, it just makes me feel a little better. And so in that sense, I'm gonna have to say Margaret Rogerson. Question number 8 is newest fictional crush. Now, I don't know. I feel like this question is a little bit awkward. Honestly, I don't really have fictional crushes, although I'll have to say that there are 2 characters that I really enjoyed this year. One is Carden from The Cruel Prince, and I know, problematic man. I don't know if it's because of all the fan art. That has been going around for the Cruel Prince series, but damn, Carden looks fine in other people's imaginations, clearly, because the fan art is on point and he looks stunning. Him and Jude actually both look really stunning in a lot of the fan art that I've been seeing as of late. I don't know, reading the books, I'm like, yeah, Carden's alright, I suppose. In a it's so awkward for me to say this, but he's very problematic. He's a fae and this world that he lives in is very cruel and the morals are a lot more different and they lack humanity a little bit. So it's set in that sort of world. I guess you could say he's a little edgy, he's a little dark, and so yeah. Definitely not someone I would like to date, but I could put him on this crush category. I definitely think the fandom helped a lot. Anyway, so my other fictional crush is more the typical dark and brooding type, and that would be Cage Tatsumi from the Shadow of the Fox series, because he's just such a stern and proper character, follows the rules, and everything is sort of for his clan. It makes for a very comical and interesting dynamic between him and Yumeko. Their dynamic was very cute together. Even though they're very much opposites, it was adorable to see and how much they eventually care for each other but won't admit it, and so I really liked him as well. So those are my two fictional crushes that I've had this year, even though fictional crushes sound a little juvenile. I'm sorry if I've offended anyone by saying that. Look, I'm not hating on fictional crushes. It happens. I love and adore a lot of characters. So yeah, this question, it makes me giggle a little. Don't you worry, I'm not hating on this question. It's just a little funny. Question number 9. Newest favorite character. I was only supposed to choose one, but I have two. It's sort of like the same as the previous question, although I would say that it's Jude from the Folk of the Yes series and Yumeko from Shadow of the Fox. These two characters are stark contrast from one another. Jude is very ambitious and she does everything in her power to climb up that political and social ladder. She gives zero care. I was gonna say something bad just then, but care factor is zero when it comes to morals, I suppose. Like I said, she lives in a world that's very cruel and has no humanity, so she needs to adapt and work with what she's got. And I loved her. I loved reading from her perspective. Yumeko, on the other hand, was just really adorable. She was very, very naive, completely opposite to Jude. Jude knows what's going on and she's trying to manipulate the situation that she's in. Yumeko has no clue what sort of situation she's in, but she's not entirely ignorant and she's not entirely stupid, I should say, because she still manages to adapt. The thing that makes her so endearing is the fact that she cares for people, she gives people chances, and she sees the goodness in people, and that kind of draws in other characters into a little band of misfits that are on this sort of journey together. I really enjoyed her character. She made for very awkward but comical moments in Shadow of the Fox. Anyway, moving on. Question number 10 is a book that made you cry. I find it very hard to cry in books, and so I honestly have not cried in any books that I've read this year. However, if I had to choose what book gave me sort of a more emotional response, even though there was no tears that were shed, I would have to say Kingdom of Back by Marie Lu. This was just bittersweet is what I should say. It kind of ends on a positive note, but knowing what happens to the character historically, it's kind of tragic in a way and just unfortunate due to the circumstances of that era. This book was kind of teetering on that magical realism realm. This book is technically more fantastical. It still kind of has that blurred line between what's reality and what's fantasy, and so I really enjoyed this book. It definitely has sort of a bittersweet ending and I adored it. I loved it, and I don't understand why this book doesn't get enough love in the booktube community. It's a fantastic read, beautifully written, and so even though I didn't so much cry in this book, it kind of had sort of a bittersweet ending to it. Question number 11, a book that made you happy. For this book, I'll have to say Sorcery of Thorns by Margaret Rogerson. Rogerson just writes very fluffy and feel-good reads, and so I highly enjoyed this book. It was just such an adorable read. The stakes were high in this book. The story kind of starts off sort of like a mystery. It feels a little self-contained, but there is this sort of mystery that unfolds and it's kind of world-ending sort of stuff. So I really enjoyed this book. It was a lot of fun. Of course, the characters are adorable. It was a little bit darker than An Enchantment of Ravens, but this book definitely made me happy and it was just sweet and adorable, and by the end of it, I honestly wish that this was a series. I really want to read more about these characters and I kind of want the world to be explored a little bit more. It had a very interesting world. I highly enjoyed this book and I totally recommend. Sorcery of Thorns. I can't wait for Margaret Rogerson to write another book. Question number 12 is the most beautiful book you've bought so far this year. And I would have to say, out of all the books I purchased, it was a hard choice because there are books with beautiful, stunning covers. These two, for example, are stunning. There have been other books as well that I haven't even hauled yet, but I narrowed it down to these Penguin editions of certain classics. I have Pride and Prejudice by Jane Austen here. This one's The Railway Children by E. Nesbit. So stunning. And then A Little Princess by Frances Hodgson Burnett. Very beautiful and stunning covers. I'll definitely do close-ups of these books, but you have to admit that these books are stunning and beautiful and I love it. Whoever did the art design, if I had to paint anything, it would definitely look like this. Should I do a painting that's kind of inspired by these? Who does the art for this? Honestly, I don't even know. What I also love about these editions is that the in flaps also have the patterns that are on the covers. Those are definitely my picks. I could talk about beautiful covers all day long, but yes, we have to move on. Question number 13. What books do you need to read by the end of this year? I tried to narrow it down, the plethora of books that I need to read by the end of this year, down to 3. First one is definitely Dune by Frank Herbert. This is a book that I've been meaning to read for years now, like over a decade. So I am finally going to try and pick this book up and give it a shot. Also, I really want to read this before the movie adaptation comes out. I feel like the movie might get pushed back to 2021. Hopefully it doesn't, but I'm really excited for Dune. The next book I have here is The Final Empire, the first book in the Mistborn series by Brandon Sanderson. You've seen this cover before. I've mentioned it so many times in the past of books that I want to read this year, and it still has not been read. I definitely feel like this book is going to be a lot of fun, and I hope I enjoy it. I am very much looking forward to this one. Very much. And the third and final book that I have for this question is, you guessed it, Jane Eyre by Charlotte Bronte. This book has also been mentioned a few too many times on this channel. Yeah, I really need to get to this book. I've been meaning to read this book for years now as well. Yeah, this is a book that I really need to get to. I've been meaning to read it for so long. It always gets shelved back onto my bookshelf and remains unread. So this time I've taken it off the shelf. I've put it next to my bed. So, I don't know. It's something that I do want to read sometime soon, but it's a difficult one to pick up because I'm reluctant and I'm also scared that I won't end up enjoying it, which will make me even more sad. That was the mid-year book Freakout tag. I very much enjoy watching this tag from other people. It definitely sheds light onto a lot of different books that I was not aware of from other booktubers. So yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed. I definitely didn't have a variety of things to choose from. I pretty much included every book that I read this year mentioned in this video. So yeah, that's a little sad. And in the second half of this year, I really do hope that I read a lot more in terms of quantity. But I suppose it's not always about quantity, but there's a lot of books that I want to get read and so little time always. Even though I feel like I have all the time in the world right now. Yeah, I need to shut up. So that is it. I hope you guys enjoyed. Hope you guys are keeping safe and reading very exciting books. I guess until next time, see you. Bye.